Welcome back to the Suit and Scrubs podcast, where business meets bedside. I'm Dan Haggerty, the guy in the suit, joined by three of the best home health PTs out there, Brendan Kirby, Lisa Thompson, and Dan Catuccio. Before we dive in, check out karenmotion.co for tools, tips, and products for anyone in home health. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you listen to us. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell so you never miss an episode. All right, let's dive in. In today's episode, we're talking about money, and who doesn't like that? We'll cover everything from travel contracts to traditional home health W-2 roles, whether salaried or pay per visit, and we'll wrap up with what you need to know about working as a 1099. Trust me, guys, there's some gems in here. I'll give you a teaser. Lisa talks about how to negotiate with your agency daily on points to account for productivity roadblocks, like, let's say, drive time, so you're getting recognized for the hidden hours of your day. I think you're going to like this one. I'm excited for today's podcast. It's great to be with the two of you, Lisa and Dan. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, doing great. Well. We're both back from vacation, I think.
Yes. Well, Lisa, where were you?
I was up in Washington visiting my sister, and then we went up to one of the lakes in Idaho, Priest Lake, and spent like 4 days up there. So it was a beautiful lake in the mountains.
We're in Washington.
Spokane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I was a traveler in Bremerton and Yakima, and Centralia, which is no one's ever heard of. Well, not to hurt anyone's feelings if you're in there, but yeah, I mean, I was kind of all in different places.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love the Pacific Northwest up there.
It is beautiful. I always forget that you were a traveler, Dan.
You want to know what's cool? So my wife and I, we were fresh out of school, and we were both trying to figure out life and if we're going to take permanent jobs, this and that, right? Mm-hmm. And we knew at some point we'd get engaged and whatnot, but we weren't yet. And we were thinking, gosh, traveling PT would be so amazing. And so we were watching the Travel Channel, and there was this national park show on, and they showed Olympic National Park, and I'm like, you don't hear about that one as much, right? And we're watching it. I'm like, what about Washington State? We should really, and that was the first state that we traveled because of that show that we watched. I'm like, oh man, I got to get to Olympic National Park. And we went to Olympic National Park probably every weekend to camp, awesome. $5 to $10 camping. You'd put your $5 bill in, totally rustic camping, but amazing. Fell in love. Yeah.
I would love to do travel therapy.
So fun, Lisa.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a great segue into what we wanted to talk about today, because we were discussing all of the different options for PTs, OTs, speech therapists, etc. And traveler. We at in-home therapy, we had always envisioned this continuum where you could try to get a student that maybe has no obligations or commitments, or they have a spouse but no kids and they want to travel, and then they find a great place and they want to settle down, and then we are a contracting company, so we have multiple different options of employment between PRN and 1099 and part-time W-2, full-time W-2, salary, and then now we're launching a Part B program, outpatient at home, but there's so many different options. So I think it was a great topic to bring up for tonight. Talk about being a traveler, Dan.
Oh, yeah.
The reason I knew about traveling is because my brother Mike was a traveling PT with his wife Linda, who's also a PT. So they were traveling PTs years before my wife and I got out of school. And that's how I learned about it. And I was like, man, that sounds amazing. They were here and there and everywhere as well. And so literally my last student affiliation, I took a permanent job there. Right. And about 3 months in, I was like, this is really our only opportunity to a perfect opportunity. We weren't rooted or settled down yet. We, didn't have kids yet. And so we thought, man, should we just do it? And we made the decision and did it. And man, what a freeing opportunity to hop in the car and drive 3,000 miles west from the Northeast to Washington State. And, we went from Washington State to Arizona, to California, to Washington, to Alaska, to California, came home, got married, went back out, it was just wild. And so afterwards, I'll never forget, we were we had done this for a total of about 5 years. And we we were having a discussion once about how fortunate we were to be able to experience all of these. I mean, I proposed to her in the Grand Teton Mountains, outside of like
Wow.
Yellowstone, like in Wyoming, on a hike. And we came back home and just were, thinking about all the memories. And we both said, like, man, this is going to sound crazy because we were like 29 years old. We were like, man, if I died tomorrow, like, I feel like I have accomplished so much. It was like, we just couldn't believe how much we saw. It was really, really neat. But what was cool, I think it fit my personality perfectly, and my wife too. Like, I personally, I think I've said this probably 100 times, I get bored easily. I like change. I like moving around. I like, trying new things and adventure. And man, every three, so like if you hit and there were a few, a job location where you're like, oof, like, I, I don't know that I could do this more than 3 months. You know what I mean? Like at the meetings, like there was all sorts of like negativity and like change happening, like bad stuff and getting bought out by other companies. We're like, well, we're only here for another few months and then we're out of here. You know what I mean? Like there's that opportunity, which is kind of nice, but you kind of jump right in. And I mean, there were places we got like a day of orientation and they're like, all right, you have a full caseload tomorrow, which is, you got to talk about those things on your interview, because like you really do, as a 24-year-old, have to be prepared for like, is this appropriate at this point? Like, I do think there are people that can travel right out of college. We did it, but you have to find the right places and really have some fostering, some, what's the word, where you have, people kind of learn.
Mentorship.
Yeah, mentors, exactly.
Support.
And I remember asking those questions, and one of the outpatient gigs that I did, they're like, yeah, we'll mentor you, no problem, no problem, no problem. And the second day, I had 8 evals on my schedule, and I was like, whoa. But it was amazing. It was amazing, and it was really cool to be able to do lots of different stuff: sports medicine, acute care, and home health, and skilled nursing. My first and only skilled nursing job was as a traveling therapist.
So,
Yeah, I was
so you
going to
did all
ask
those
what
different settings.
Say it again.
You did all those different settings.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything except for peds. I did a lot of home. I did home health, and I'm on my 7th home health agency right now as a permanent right now. But I mean, I did home health in Alaska, California, Washington State, Maine. I might be missing one, but I did outpatient in South Carolina. So just such a cool experience to be able to see how everyone runs things. But what was really neat was, after doing that many gigs in home health, I kind of learned, like, it's you deal with the same struggles and curveballs everywhere you go. It's like people aren't per se. I mean, yes, people are different in different locations, but you deal with the same things.
I think you have a good way, if you're doing a lot of different home health companies in all of these different states, to kind of figure out what works for you best, right? Because yes, it's the same, but each branch kind of has their different way of doing things. Also, you have different documentation systems.
Sure.
So I think that's a really big benefit, to kind of figure out what works best for you. And especially,
Absolutely.
it seemed like you kind of went back and back to home health more often in your traveling, and kind of settled there primarily.
We sure did. I mean, there was one time we were in California. We loved it. We were in Central Coast of California. Loved it. I don't know if you, San Luis Obispo, Pismo Beach, just beautiful. Oh, we lived literally 2 blocks from the ocean. Like, it was amazing. And so we were loving life, and we're like, we got to do Alaska though. Like, while we're out here, we got to do it, right? And so we were looking for Alaska, and we landed a job. Lorraine was going to do outpatient in Fairbanks. I was going to do home health in Fairbanks, and our company offered to fly us there. And we're like, we want to drive. Like, this is our only opportunity. And so we drove 3,400 miles from California to Fairbanks. And then from Fairbanks, we're like, should we go back to California where we just were and loved, after, like, once it started to like get snowy in September? And we called back California. They're like, yeah, we'll take you back. It was like amazing. I'm like, oh my goodness, let's pinch ourselves,
So talk about the way that the pay was structured, because I see a lot of times people are asking, because they'll be like, hey, is this a good hourly rate for a traveler position? And people are usually, I think the initial reaction for folks that haven't traveled might be, oh, that sounds incredibly low, because there's this pay per visit type of mentality. But we had some experience from my side in terms of, pricing out offers for travelers. And we would do an hourly rate as opposed to pay per visit. And so, call it 40, 50 something dollars per hour. And then we would structure it so that there was a per diem. So you'd get 100, something a day for the per diem. And then you'd get, 150 a day for lodging. And then you would get either mileage or a fuel stipend. But when you started to add it all up, plus it's guaranteed, right, for 13 weeks. We did 13 weeks. Is that what you did? 13-week contracts? Yeah. So when you look at all of it, it's guaranteed 13 weeks worth of full-time income. And if you do divide it out on a per visit basis, assuming however many visits you're doing per day today, 4 to 6, whatever it may be, then it's actually probably even more lucrative. Is that what you found?
Oh my goodness. I mean, when we became traveling therapists, we were kind of like amazed at, now this has been a while, but I still see the contracts out there. I mean, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
But just to give an example of back then, my first job out of college, I was making $21 an hour. And in a minute, when I became a traveler, I was making 30, like boom, like that, but the way that they did it was, but then beyond that though, then there was a stipend. And so literally I was a 28-year-old, and I'm not saying this to brag, this is the way that it was. I was making 6 figures as a 28-year-old. It was crazy because of the stipend and all the stuff, so they would give an hourly rate and then they would give a stipend. And so let's just say they gave a certain living stipend depending on where you were living, let's just say they gave you $2,000 for living and I found a place for $1,200. I mean, then I'm using my money conservatively and pocketing the rest and whatnot. So they paid for housing. Some companies would say, listen, we'll just find housing for you furnished and we'll send you there. And I'd say, fine. And then you'd get your hourly rate with like a smaller stipend, but yeah, I mean, it truly was, that's the way that they structured it back then. I want to say that the ones that I see now, it's like one lump sum. You do what you want with that weekly, this is including your hourly rate plus your stipend and plus your living all in that one combined thing, which today's rates are obviously wilder compared to, back then. But
yeah, so divide that week divided by 25, 30 something points, and you're like, oh, this is actually a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Especially for, younger. When you're nowhere close to the top of your pay scale, you're really making out pretty darn well. But I met people who were new grads, and I met people who were getting ready to retire, because they were maybe empty nesters at the time. They're like, we'll do two travel gigs a year and vacation the rest type of thing. Pretty neat.
We talk about taking the summer off and me getting a travel therapy job for the summer and just going somewhere every summer. Like, I'll go get a job, we'll work for 13 weeks, we'll stay somewhere new, travel.
I actually know a couple of travelers that are travelers in their own markets. So somebody that, lives in Chicago or something, and they picked up a travel assignment that's in Chicago.
Yeah.
And they get all the benefits and they're still actually at home. It's an interesting way to look at it.
So I remember there being these rules where you had to live 50 miles away from, in order to collect the stipend, this and that. But I guess when you're contracting yourself, you can kind of write different things into your, I don't know. But definitely. Like, I will say that when we went down to permanent, like when we both found permanent jobs, because Lorraine was pregnant, and we kind of had to come down to earth and our salary is not what it was. It was remarkably less. And that's why I wanted to just, while we could continue to travel, let's keep going. This is, and truthfully doing so helped us to, save up, quite a bit for our first house and stuff. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and then when you transition into a more of a typical home health position, obviously there's still a lot of options there. And I know the two of you have, very, very different arrangements, but at least where I'm at, we sort of cover the gamut. We don't do hourly, but we have salary, we have salary W-2s, full-time W-2s, part-time W-2s, and then we have 1099. And I think there's probably pros and cons to each one of those structures. I know, Dan, your salary, right?
I am.
Yeah.
I am.
I mean, I feel like from a salary perspective, if you think about it from kind of the top down, I mean, the pros would obviously be the stability of that. But the cons are, of course, compared to like a 1099, for example, you can't deduct anything. And I mean, you're getting, your taxes paid out. And I'm assuming you're getting held to a fairly rigid productivity standard, because that's, if anything less than that productivity standard, and that salary is obviously being spread out over fewer visits from a company's perspective. So I assume they're a little stricter with you on that than maybe you would have seen with pay per visit or 1099.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like as far as like, I remember interviewing different places, and the similar productivity expectations. One kind of a neat thing about like hospital-based systems, you can be full-time at 40 hours, you can be somewhat part-time at 32 hours, or you can be part-time at 24 hours and still be salaried and still collect and still have benefits, which that's rare. It's pretty nice. Now that's not everywhere, obviously. There's but that would be a benefit of a lot of the hospital-based systems that I see. That's one benefit.
Yeah,
There are some home health companies that still have that aren't hospital based, that do.
Oh yeah.
Like full time is 32 hours at a salary, and then they have a part time, and their part time is hourly, and then they have PRN.
Okay.
And they do have the option. They do, 32 hours, you have your salary rate, and then you get bonus if you go over that.
Yeah.
But it still ends up, usually the bonus ends up not really being a bonus if you break it down point wise and salary wise. So that's something to look at if you're negotiating contracts out there. Oh, this bonus per point seems like a lot. Like, oh, it's $60 per point. That seems like so much. But if you break down your salary that you're making, what each point is worth, sometimes that $60 is less than what your salary is if you were to be on that same. So just kind of doing the math, and people that don't have paid per visit experience aren't looking at, because you don't know, right? You're not breaking it down per point. You're just saying, oh, I get this salary, this is what it is, and oh, I get this much extra for what I do. And that's great.
From an employer's perspective, we've looked at it and we've said, hey, if we're in an area where we can't keep somebody full, if there's not enough, if there's not enough of a census in a certain area, but yet you need to utilize a salary in order to recruit the proper talent, we'll look at maybe a 20 point, so I'll use 30 points as full time, 100%, and we'll say, okay, we can do 20%. So if we were going to pay, I'm just going to use even numbers here because it's easy to do on the fly. But if we were going to pay $100,000 for full time, we're going to pay, but we need 20 points instead of 30. So we're going to pay 2/3 of $100,000, so 66,000. And then any points per week over, or per, pay period, or per month, however it could be structured, any points above that is essentially pay per visit above that at that point. So it sort of gives the therapist the opportunity to, still have that guaranteed salary, and the incentive, maybe if they want to go a little bit farther outside of their coverage area or whatever they may have agreed to pick up additional points if they want to go above what that 2/3 of a salary might be. So I've always thought that hybrid model was a good arrangement. But you're right, Lisa. I think you have to make sure that when you look at the above the threshold, you're going to want to do the math to figure that out.
Yeah. I think that's a good model too. But it really gives the clinician flexibility for what they want to do. Do I just want to be at my, 30 hours this week, or do I want to work a little bit more, take home more? Which is nice because you kind of have that flexibility to figure out what you want, how much you want to work that week.
Right.
As long as there are the patients out there to be seen.
Yeah.
But I know, like for me, I'm paid per visit. So with a certain productivity expectation, and I don't have to go over my productivity. And sometimes even if you're going to go outside the territory, like, well, I'm not salary. So like if you're going to have me go way out here, you've got to compensate in some sort of way, right? Because I'm paid per visit. So it's got to make sense for myself as well.
Right.
And then
Do you
you
get a
have like,
mileage?
I
Do
get
you get
mileage. Yeah.
and then if you go more than X number of miles in a day or in a pay period, do you get a productivity like points to offset that?
We get if you drive, but yeah, if you drive a certain amount of miles between a patient, you get an extra like quarter point. And if you drive a certain amount of time, so it accounts for like traffic and stuff. Because sometimes, like for me, 13 miles is going to be 30 minutes, right? But first, if I get on the freeway, I'm driving 30 miles in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends. So that's why they do it time-based and mileage-based, but it's not a whole lot. And I don't get like, oh, if you drive 100 miles, maybe we do, but I'm never driving 100 miles a day. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming if I did, I would be asking about it for sure.
Dan, thinking about what Lisa just said in terms of this, going outside of your coverage area, when you're with your arrangement being salaried, do you have a coverage, like a map, or are you just sort of expected to kind of go where you need to go during the 40 hours a week that you're working?
I'll tell you what, in the 14 years I've been where I am, it's become kind of like a nice, well-oiled machine in the sense that like I cover two to three towns. That's it. Now, and so and there's probably 4 or 5 therapists covering the same town. I mean, it's like a highly populated area, right? So now if we were on low census, like during COVID when things were weird and, do we then cover, other areas and, help other places out, of course, and I think the way that we did it really is it would be on a case to case basis. Listen, if I was like, I'm a vestibular therapist. So if they were calling me and, hey, Dan, we could use your services like 20 miles this way. And I would say, sure. But like, I would have some accounting of the mileage plus the vestibular assessment included in that because it's like well outside of my range, etc. So yeah, it's on a case to case basis, but they have, different pods, they call it. So like, one pod here, one pod here, one pod here, and they cover these different areas so that what it does, obviously, is it helps keep us more efficient and less driving times. There, of course, are going to be more rural areas and more city areas, and so each area is going to probably address, like, because you're always going to have clinicians that are driving more than other clinicians, and I always encourage, if that's the case, you have to just really have that conversation with your manager and say, listen, Lisa is driving like nothing, and Dan is driving like 1,000,000 miles, and we both are seeing the same amount of patients. Like that doesn't make any sense,
Right.
And so that's where you just have to have that discussion. Now, I kind of like the idea of having just a calculation, literally like what Lisa was talking about. Where listen, if it's accounting for the fact that I'm driving 30 minutes, it's already calculating like a little bit of an extra, point towards productivity, whatever it is.
Yeah,
I kind of like that idea.
I would say to anybody out there listening is to ask and talk about this with your clinical managers because they're not going to offer it up to you to say, oh,
Right.
hey, I see that you're driving an hour and you're seeing, only 3 people, but you're working 8 hours a day. We should give you more points. They're not going to say that, right? So you have to go and ask and say, hey, look, I'm driving, 3 hours a day and I'm only able to see 4 points and I'm getting paid way less than somebody else that's able to pack more into their day, right? Or my productivity as a salaried clinician is 28 for Dan and 28 for Lisa, but Dan can see his 28 in 30 hours and I'm seeing my 28 in 45 hours, but we're both getting paid the same, right? But I'm working 15 hours more. They're not going to tell you that you can be putting in extra mileage. So you've got to ask those questions.
That's a really
ask. Is it? I mean, do you find that that's something? With us, it's all sort of built into the system, and I guess I don't necessarily know if someone came to a clinical manager and sort of negotiated like kind of an arbitrary points arrangement based on the unique circumstances. Have you found that you can kind of negotiate one-off points arrangements when you have that type of a unique circumstance?
I have for sure. I've had visits where I've been doing like a wheelchair evaluation and I'm in that home for an hour and a half plus I'm doing an extra like 30 minutes to 45 minutes of the write-up for all the paperwork for the wheelchair, and my visit is, you know, just a reassessment or something, but I'm doing an extra hour of work. So I'm emailing my like branch director and saying, hey, like, can I put an extra, you know, half a point or an extra point for all of this time that I did, right? And I think same thing with non-billable discharges, like your 66s. I don't know if yours are 66s as well, but when somebody discharges and you have to go and do a discharge on your own, you're not seeing the patient, but I'm completing paperwork at home by myself, right? And there's no way to capture that time as a paid per visit clinician. So we are like, hey, I'm doing this work at home. How do I compensate myself for this? And then it's like, oh, you can add a half a point for every non-billable discharge you do. And maybe, I don't know if you do one, Dan, if that's just included in your salary or if you're able to add in like NVA time for that.
Yeah. So for us, for my specific company, we do get a half point for non-billable or for discharges without a visit. You know, which, and that's new, and that's really nice because no one's asking for it. No one wants to. I mean, listen, like the patient didn't want to finish. That's not my fault, and I shouldn't be penalized for having, you know, and having to do this 25 minutes worth of paperwork. If you want quality, pay me for it.
Yeah. You know? And I haven't seen the patient in 3 weeks because I did the eval and they saw the PTA for 3 weeks and then they decided they were done. But here I am.
Rose is at the casino 3 weekends in a row.
You think about the need for a points system, and it's really just to equate what would otherwise be a generic visit and equate it into units of time, right? So, you know, before we had points, it was like, hey, everybody needs to be at a 28 visit per week, you know, target, and it's like, well, wait, this one over here's doing, you know, 3 starts a day, and you know, so we're almost disincentivizing our therapists from practicing at the top of their license because they need to get as many visits in, where as opposed to having assistants doing those visits. It's the same thing if you think about with the drive time or doing a non-billable discharge. It's still a unit of time of your day that you can't be doing something else with. So the point of a point is to associate that with a unit of time. So it really only does seem fair.
And I don't work for free. Period. My employers love me, I think.
No, but the points you make are so important, especially for newcomers, especially for, because let's be honest, you get bolder, you learn to get bolder as you get older because of exactly what Lisa said, which is if you don't ask, it's probably not going to be given to you. You know, especially, you know, for a large company, you think they're going to get out there in the middle of the auditorium and say, okay, everyone's going to get a free unit because of X, Y. No, like you have to, you have to, you know, have that courageous conversation. Especially anytime you're starting to feel resentment because of certain things going on, you have to talk about it. And if you don't talk about it, the resentment's going to build up, and then what happens? You self-implode and you end up leaving, and no one even knows why.
Right. And it might be something so simple like, hey, I'm driving all this much. Like, what can we do about it? And they're like, oh, yeah, just do this, add an extra point, no big deal. And it's something very quick and easy. And you're building up all of this resentment, right? In burning yourself out when there's a very simple answer. And usually usually, but it's not something new to companies, right? That people that are driving more, putting in more time, want to be compensated somehow for that.
Yeah. The last one, well, there's pay per visit, obviously, you know, full-time and part-time W-2, but I think most people are pretty familiar with that. But I think the last arrangement that I think is worth diving into, and as I sit here thinking about it, would almost be interesting to find somebody that is a kind of like a gig. It's almost like a gig, you know, someone putting together multiple 1099 positions where they're taking visits here, there, everywhere, or they might have, you know, a 9-to-5 job at or a regular job at a hospital. Yeah, Lisa's
so I have like 8 jobs.
Right. You know, so and I've always thought obviously the benefit to being a 1099 or a PRN is that the definition of that is that you're not managed, right? You can't necessarily be held to any expectations. You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to go. You don't have to work, accept any patients you don't want to. You don't have to work any special days. And then there's obviously some pretty significant tax, benefits to that as well. So at least I know.
I know for me, so like right now I have my full-time home health job, and then I do like some PRN work in the SNF. That's just like down the street from my house, which is really nice. And it's super nice just as like a change of pace to go in for a couple hours and interact with people, but then leave, which is really nice. And then I also do a 1099 Med B outpatient in the home, which is, it's like a whole different, like it's still you're going, like we'll bring on people that are discharging from home health, and they still, like they don't qualify for Med A home health anymore, but they can't get to outpatient, right? They don't have transportation. They want someone to come in and still like progress their exercises, and a lot of that you can't do in home health. And so the PTA I work with, his son is an OT, and he sees the same need. He was working home health, and he started his own company. And so he brought myself and the PTA on, and we do, it's kind of like the same, but it's a kind of a whole different world. The documentation is way less. I have to like switch my home health brain off going into doing an eval, because I'm like, no, this is like you're coming into me in a clinic. Like I don't have to be going through like your entire medication list and like answering all these OASIS questions. Like I can just do the physical therapy aspect of it.
So, Lisa, you're not doing a head to toe skin assessment on your Med Bs? I'm just kidding.
No.
I know you're not.
But I mean, maybe if there's an issue, then like you're okay. Well, go call your doctor. But I'm not going to do it.
What kind of from a compensation perspective? I know our 1099s might not make as much on a per visit or per point basis, but they're able to write a lot of things off. Have you worked with a good? I've seen a lot of different tax professionals, kind of chime in on the different forums on Facebook or something and mention a lot of the different write-offs.
Yeah, I know my taxes are going to be really interesting next year. But I think because this guy started his own company, is very therapy based, and it's very small, the pay is almost similar to like what I'm making now in Med A, but I can deduct my mileage. I can deduct, your scrubs, your gas, like all of these things you can deduct a lot more on the taxes. So I think it kind of makes up for it. And I have control over who I want to see. I'm like, look, I'm only going to this one area.
Yeah.
So I'm not driving more than, I think my furthest patient is like 20 minutes from my house. And I'm like, I'm not going further than that.
Yeah.
And they kind of know what you're going to be up for. So I imagine it's sort of like tailored to the days of the week or the hours or the areas that you're comfortable adding this onto your caseload per week.
Yeah. And we're bringing in a lot of the patients ourselves. So it's like, hey, if we have somebody we're working with, like we have to discharge you, but look, we have this other option for you.
Yeah.
And so that works out pretty well.
I think it would be neat if anybody listening is strings together, pieces together a series of, basically gets a full-time caseload from multiple different sources, all as 1099 PRN. It'd be interesting to hear the perspective of how you do that and what your approach is.
That's what I used to be when I was full. Yeah, I was like, I've done it. I literally have done everything. I've done. I was full-time SNF for like the first 3 years, and I got to that point where I was like, I cannot step foot in a SNF again, or like full-time. And so I went and I had like 4 or 5 PRN jobs, and I was like, look, I don't need benefits, so I don't need to have the full-time like insurance and everything. And I want the flexibility. My husband's being deployed a lot. I've got 2 kids at home. I can just be PRN. but some days you're not having a full caseload, right? And some days everybody is asking you like, hey, can you come in for 4 hours? Like, can you see these 5 patients? And you're like, well, you kind of have to pick and choose what you want to do, but you have to know like you might not get work one day, or you're only seeing like 2 hours, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
a lot of times I think in therapy, there's like full-time PRN therapists. Like the SNF I PRN at, they have PRN therapists, but they're like 4 hours every day, but they're PRN, you know?
Yep. Yep.
So there's definitely those options out there.
Yeah, I know a couple of therapists that I've worked with over the years that are technically I mean, they are 1099s, but they're still doing a full caseload with one company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
there's definitely some benefits to that on both sides. But at the end of the day, if they're offered it, they're getting a full caseload per week. But if they decide that, hey, I'm not going to be around for the next month, then it's kind of like,
Mhm.
well, you don't have to really ask for PTO. Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
like,
but
see,
you're also not getting PTO.
Right.
right,
So like,
Right.
if you're
right.
offered those 2 weeks, you're not
You're
getting
not
an
getting paid.
income,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
There's such pros and cons. I mean, if you've ever been in a salaried position and denied PTO at least a couple of times and let down your family as a result,
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
it's a really crummy feeling. And so when it happens a few times, you're like, all right, what's worth it here? You know? So yeah, of course you know, and those are the things that you have to weigh because it is a very big deal. Yeah, okay, I'll go away. I'm not getting paid. You have to be comfortable with that, you know?
I remember, I can't remember if this video was recently or when it was, Dan, but I had seen you because it was one of the more like emotional ones. And you're like, hey,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I remember that one. I
Yeah.
think you'd been denied PTO and it was a vacation for the family or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the year after COVID and I hadn't called out a single day. And things were finally starting to open up and my whole family was going away and it was like a big family reunion and everyone went and I was denied it and include my wife and kids went. I'm like, you guys please go, like, but I, like a full grown man, sobbed. I was so sad to like miss that, you know. And so that type of stuff, what it does for me and what it does for probably anyone, but like if you have any creative bone in your body, that really set a big fire under me to start really trying to use my imagination and creativity to do other things to make money. I
Yeah.
mean, whether it be playing the piano or content creation or course creation or putting on a wig, no,
I
putting
will
on a
dress
pink robe,
to take
you
my family
know.
vacation.
Having your daughters spray water on you to simulate rain.
Yeah, yeah. But really, you know, these are things that do come across people's brains. You know I'm not the only one who's been let down. And I'm not going to speak poorly for a second about my company. Here's the bottom line. When you work for a company, this is something that you have to, when you're working for anyone other than yourself, there are the repercussions that can come with that. There's the ramifications that can come with that. One of them being you can't give everyone the same week off, and it sucks. And but you know there are other options, right?
Yeah. And we don't have the option to work remotely, right? Like our patients need to be seen. So like if everybody's off, there are patients that need to be seen that aren't getting seen, right? And so that's a big, like you have to understand where the company is coming from, but it can hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
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 Well, the pros and cons of salary are, you know, obviously you've got a consistent, you can count on something and you've got your benefits and your PTO and you've got everything else. But the con is you're not your own, you know, PRN, make your own decisions. There's going to be a time and a place where something's going to happen that's going to, you know, make you feel like you got screwed over, but everything happens for a reason. And now you're here because of that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been a great discussion. I do think in the future, you know, even talking to Lisa, you mentioned, you know, a tax advisor or an accountant.
Oh, yeah.
I know a few that I think, especially as we near that time of the year when people are thinking about, oh, I should have, you know, get all this stuff
Good,
organized so that I can, you
Yeah,
know,
I need a
manage all these
connection.
write-offs. Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be fascinating to have someone come and sort of be prepared to go through a lot of that stuff. but that's for next time, I guess. But for today, thank you guys both for, as usual, all of your insight and contributions. I hope that everyone took away at least a good summary of a couple of the different employment models. I know there's a lot more that we could dig into, especially with a couple of experts in terms of each one of them, but that was great. So as usual, thank you guys all for listening. It's always a pleasure. Be sure to visit caremotion.co and check out all of the resources there in our podcast library. Make sure to subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts so you can hear us each week. Have a great day.
Thanks,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.
Yeah.